And welcome to this exciting Blender tutorial. Today we're going to be building out our bounty hunter's den, doing a lot of modeling and putting the room together. So let's jump into it. All right, so here we are back in Blender, ready to go. Now we've got the basic setup that we had from our last episode where we set the scale of our scene using this rough sort of dummy geometry. And we're going to just start getting to work on building this thing out. So let's go ahead and delete the floor because we don't really need that right now. And we'll keep the rest of this stuff, but we can hide the hollow table for now. And now what we're going to do is start off by building the shape of our room. Now we want this kind of like Adobe dome kind of thing. So we're just going to select the room object and we're going to enter edit mode by hitting tab. And you hold down the Alt key and click on these rings with face mode selected, and it'll select the whole ring of faces for us. Now, they're curved in a little bit, which I don't necessarily want. So I'm going to hit Scale, Z, and 0. And that's just going to scale all these points on the Z axis to 0, which will just flatten them out and make it nice and level. All right, now I'm going to grab it and I'm going to move it down on the Z, right down to the base. And this is where we're going to start. Okay, now we're going to begin by just kind of building up this archway. So we just hit E to extrude, G to grab, and Z to lock it in. Now there's probably like a quicker way of doing that. There's always a quicker way of doing things in Blender. That's what I've found at least. And you know, I don't know all the different, all the different crazy things you could do with the hotkeys. I know a lot, but there is definitely limits to what I've been able to figure out through the years. So if you know of a quicker way of doing this, let me know in the comments below. I actually really appreciate any kind of tips that anybody gives. I'm learning a lot and growing a lot through this tutorial series. So please don't assume that I know something that you do. Chances are you got me beat. All right. I'm not going with the strict dome. I'm kind of like giving this a little bit of character, a little bit of interest. So I don't want to, now that we're getting up to the top, it's there. It's getting quite flat, this curve thing. I'm going to start curving in towards the middle. So I'm going to switch to my edge mode. And what I can do is I can actually just grab these guys on the Z and then scale them out a bit. And that's going to kind of roughly get them all to be facing each other. I can switch back to face mode and hit E and scale that in, grab it up a little bit, kind of keep the curve going, looking at the overall shape. Okay, so now that we've got this tiny little hole that we need to fill, what we can do is we want to make sure that this is a nice even fill for this hole without creating any dimples or problems like that. So this is a little, bit of a modeling challenge. When you face something like this, you can go, all right, well, I could just hit F, right? Or actually, let's delete these faces first around the edge. So just Alt click these faces, delete those. Now you can select to edge mode, select that loop and hit F, and that's going to just fill it, right? But when you get into Unreal, it's actually going to cause problems because it's not continuous geometry. Or if this was something you're going to animate, you wanted bones or whatever, and you're doing a character, again, you're going to have that kind of a problem. So you need to think about how do you evenly fill this so that everything works well. If we scale it all to 0, right, and then just merge the vertices, it's actually going to end up with this single vertice that has like a whole bunch, like 30 different edges kind of coming off it, and that's going to create a pinched vertice where you get these like edges that are really strong kind of coming out of it, look like the top of a tent kind of, won't be a very nice look. So one thing that's really helpful when you're doing modeling is to think about it in terms of what your end result is, what you want to achieve, and don't worry about trying to get it all to fit perfectly with the faces you have. So often what's great is to actually kind of build out what you want things to end up and then figure out how to match it all up together. So if that doesn't make a lot of sense when I describe it, I'll just demonstrate here. So I know I want to bring all these together and I'm going to meet them in a really even way. Ideally, what would be great would be like if I could get this vertex to go to this vertex to go to this vertex. So I've created one big polygon here. And then here, I want this vertex to go here and this one to go here. And so where these intersect, I could have a new polygon in the middle, so it's like a grid. And then when I think about it, actually, I want all of this just to form one big grid with each corresponding section stretching across to another. And I also kind of want that to kind of move into a bit of a grid pattern, so it's easy for me to, line it all up. So the best way to figure out how to do that is to, of course, first make a grid, as opposed to trying to like, connect these polygons first and then like doing some edge loop cuts and then bringing this over and connecting it. Like that would take forever. So instead, let's go ahead and while we're in edit mode, hit Shift A, create a plane, and then scale it down just so it fits into our space. Now we've got these match, so that points are right. We'll connect up these points, and then each of these sort of quadrants, these 4 quadrants, has 1, 2, 3, 4 edges, and we need to have corresponding edges to match up with. Okay, so we need to have 1, 2, 3 cuts here, 4, 5, 6, 7 cuts. So we should be able to subdivide this 7 times. So now we've got everything should line up. Yep. There we go. And it's the same across these because, of course, we've got the same number of sides on each of them. That will differ based on how many sides you had with the original cylinder that you created to create your object. So if it's an even number, then you're going to be able to do this easily. If it's an odd number, it gets a little bit harder, but it's still doable. Okay, so now that we've done that, we can scale it down a little bit so that it's a bit easier to grab. And then what we can do is actually, with it selected, just hit L to select the whole thing if you lose it. Let's hit 1 on the number keypad and switch to transparent mode. And what you want to do is make sure that vertex snapping is selected in your little snapping icon. You don't have to turn on snapping and turn it off. What we can do is we can grab it on the Z plane and hold down Control, and that will allow us to temporarily turn on snapping. So these 2 bits here are the 2 bits we need to connect to. So we'll do 1 for the top, 1 for the bottom. So I'll grab it on the Z, hold down Control, and snap that there. Then with this selected still, I'll hit Shift D to duplicate it, grab it on the Z, hold down Control, and I'll snap to another vertex. There. Now let's make sure we've got that right. Yeah, that looks correct. All right, cool. Now what you want to do is you can hold down Alt and Shift at the same time to select the edges of the top grid. And then we're going to hold down Shift and Alt and select the edges of the top circle loop. And then what we want to do is bridge edge loops. An edge loop is a special kind of edge. It's an edge that it's a continuous loop. Hope that makes sense. It's better to show an example, but we don't have time. Anyways, now we've bridged it. So you can see it's automatically created polygons that match up and fill in that whole area. So now we can do the same for the bottom one. So we'll just hold down Shift, and actually we'll just hold down Alt first and clear our selection, and then hold down Shift and select the edges, and then select the bottom edge, and then F3, bridge edge loops. Now what we need to do is we got to fix our normals, which you can see we've got them turned on. They're pointing in the wrong direction. So you can notice that if we switch out of edit mode, I think, oh no, it's only on the inside that they're messed up, but that's all right. Let's hit Shift, just hit A to select everything. And then we go up to Mesh, Normals, and Recalculate Outside. Now, when you're editing something like this in Blender and you've got like an interior that you're trying to build, it gets really annoying because you want to see inside and you can't, because you're outside. So what you can do to get around that is actually use the camera clipping in your view. So on the side here, go to the View tab, and under View, we can just hit Clip Start. We can drag this up until it starts to clip through our object. And now you can see, you can always kind of see through it. Now, there'll be times when your object disappears and you have to back this off, but it's a great way to kind of just help you if you're working on an interior. You want to be able to see inside. We're going to shade it smooth. Okay, our next challenge is to cut a hole in the middle of our object here to create the door. So cutting a hole in something is naturally really tough in a 3D software like Blender. To get really nice even polygons and stuff when you're slicing through things, it just gets really, really tough. Now we can have the bool modifier. So what we could do is grab our object, go into modifiers, and we could go to Boolean and then select this little cylinder guy. And we could turn him off so we don't see him. And you can see it's done what we wanted, but the edges, look horrific. Like that's just, yeesh. So in order to really get this to work, we're going to use a kind of similar approach to what we just did. We're not going to use a Boolean, and we're actually going to custom cut this hole for ourselves. So let's get started. First, we're going to take our object that's labeled door, and we're just going to rename it just for clarity, door reference. And what we could do is go ahead and switch it to, if we switch on the orange tab here, the orange box tab, we can go down to visibility, viewport display, that's the one. And we're going to change this from textured to wire. This way this will just stay wireframe and won't get in the way of our view. Now, if we jump into edit mode for our room, let's have a look at what we need to do. So we've got 1, 2, 3, it's about 4 across and 3 down in terms of the amount of space that our door is covering. So we kind of need to make an object work within this. We could probably add in one more layer up here, just so we've got a 4x4 square that we need to convert to this circular object. So what we need to do is create another cylinder just as something to kind of use as a template for ourselves. And we want it to match this number because we want to be able to, cut a hole and then build out a circular shape. We can create a new cylinder that's a reference that actually has the same number of faces. So we want to be able to have 16 sides to this cylinder, or 16 vertices, be the other way to say it. Hit Shift A and go Mesh, Cylinder, and we want to type in 16 vertices. And now we've got the right number of sides. It's going to match that square for us, okay? So let's do the same thing we've done with this one. We're going to select this and we're going to turn it into wire as the display mode. We're going to rotate it on the Y, 90, and we're going to grab it on the X. So we've got this roughly in the same position. We're going to scale it down. We just kind of make sure it matches the same circumference so that the scale in our scene feels like it was when we did our setup. All right, that's pretty good. Okay, we can go ahead and hide our door reference point. Let's jump back into edit mode for our room. And we can start by deleting all these faces. So we're just going to hit X to delete and faces. And we want to delete the other side as well. So we could see out. All right, now let's grab this up. We're just going to center it into this space. Okay, create an edge loop actually right down the middle. And we can hit P to separate by selection. Select the new little loop that we've created. Control select the room so you don't select everything as well. Shift select would select all of it. And we just want to go join. So if you type F3 and type in join, you can hit that. Control J is the hotkey. So now when you see our new cylinder objects disappeared, that's because now it's part of room. We can hide this cylinder. So now we're just focusing on things. And we want to go to the side view, and we want to kind of line up this circle to be at the same curve as our wall. So let's take let's actually fix this up a little bit. Just got not the best shape, so I'm just going to grab this one and I'm going to grab it on the X, just out a little bit. I'm just trying to get that curve to be a little more even, and then we can select this, hit L to select all of it. And now we can rotate like that, roughly. And then we can grab it on the X, just line that up roughly like that. We can get it a bit more exact. And hit Shift D to duplicate, grab it on the X. I'm just gonna put it right about here. So just looking at the curve of things. Okay, now we can jump out of orthographic mode. And now what we can do is we can alt click on the first one, and then we can, just like we did before, Shift and then Alt click the other one. So you can see it's an edge loop because when we Alt clicked it, it fully selected the whole thing. And then we can hit F3 again and bridge edge loops. Now we've got a nice clean bit of geometry that's moving into this circular shape. We can do the same for over here. So again, we can Alt click and then Shift Alt click and F3 bridge. And then we can do this for the middle bit as well. We can Alt click that one and Shift Alt click the other one and F3 and bridge. And now it's bridged all of those edge loops and we have a perfect circle. Now to kind of clean it up a bit, because if you look at the geometry, it's still a bit wonky. It just means that we just need a few more edge cuts just to kind of help the renderer know how to shade this thing. So we can come in real tight like this, and then you can hit double tap S, which is going to scale. You can do that with G as well for grab or rotate, but it's basically going to move it along the edges. So it'll take the vertices and move them along the edges that they exist on. So we can do the same over here. And then we can also define the interior edge loops as well. So I can just roll my mouse wheel to make 2. I can grab the first one and double tap G and just drag it right here. You could also use like the bevel tool to do this as well. There's no reason why that would work. Great. And now if we jump out of wireframe mode and have a look, it'll help us spot any issues we have in the shading. Now this one's looking like it's a little too, got a little bit of a weirdness going on right there. It might be a normals thing. So let's just select everything and go mesh, normals, and recalculate. And that didn't fix it. So we've got, I think we may have the edge maybe too close. Or do we accidentally have, we actually have an extra edge loop. So let's, instead of just hitting delete, if we go to delete edge loop, that will do it cleanly and it won't get rid of any of our faces. There we go. Yeah, so it just had a doubled up edge loop. I had 2 there accidentally. And now we can compare that to our door reference size and see how it looks. And we are too high as well. We're gonna have to bring it down, but overall that's working really well. So let's go ahead and line it up now. I'm gonna select the inner group of faces like that. If you hold down Control and hit the plus key on your number pad, it'll expand your selection. You can expand it until you've got all the bits selected that pertain to our door. And then what we can do is we can grab it on the Z and bring it right down. Just like that. And I might bring it out on the X as well a little bit. And even rotate it on the Y some. Just kind of get that shape to look nice. One thing that in our reference, the entrance is flat here, so it's not actually round. So what we could do for that is I'm just going to back off my clipping, get a little closer, is we can grab these 2 faces and the edges, and then we could hit S to scale, Z, and 0. And that's going to flatten those guys up. And then I might just bring the 2 points that are down here, I'll bring them up like that. Just kind of even it out. Perfect. All right, now what we can do is we can actually take, with our room selected, we can add a subdivision surface modifier to really smooth it out. And you can see, because we've done a good job with our faces, it's going to smooth really nicely. Also, to make sure if you haven't already, just right click on it and click Shade Smooth. And that will help give it this nice smooth look. Okay, so next we're going to make our floor. So I want kind of like a grid floor. So I'm going to turn off my room and I'm going to create a plane. Okay, and in edit mode, I'm going to hit Control R to create a loop cut right down the middle. And I'm going to think about how I'm going to make this thing work. I'm going to create a couple of loop cuts like this. Let me count them and see. We've got 1, 2, 3. Do one more. That should make it nice and even. And I'll show you what I'm up to in 1 second. So I'll create one edge there, and I'll create another one. Control here, and then I'll select both of these, and then I'll hit the scale Y and just drag them out. And then I'm going to grab these faces, just like this, and delete them, just to create some gaps in our floor. Now I'm gonna, instead of doing this on all sides, I'm just gonna delete all of these vertices. Oops. All of these vertices, there we go. And I'm gonna add in a mirror modifier. Mirror modifiers are great if you've got symmetrical objects. It just makes life a lot easier because you don't have to do repetitive tasks on both sides of something and try and make them fit, make them match. I'm just switch to vertice mode. Now, there's 101 ways to do things in modeling, in any 3D software, Blender especially though, because Blender has just got so many different ways of doing stuff. So it's really easy to kind of get overwhelmed by that and to just, never model anything and think, oh, it's because how could I ever, make stuff because I don't know all the hotkeys or I don't know the most efficient way to do it. You'll never know it all. You know, you can post stuff on a forum and somebody's going to look at it and go, oh, you could have saved like hours if you just done it this other way. Don't let that get to you. Just take it and learn and put it in your, you know, bag of tricks and use it the next time. It's really, really cool to be able to just continue to grow your skill set, and you'll be amazed at what you can learn. But don't stress about, you know, not knowing the best way to do something. There's best practice to have like good geometry, but in terms of how you get there, I mean, it's really wide open. I'm just trying to decide if I want it to be even. I think I do. I want to have like an even grid. So what I need to do to get that to happen is put a loop there. And if you don't move the mouse when you click, you just click and then hit escape to get out of it. It's not going to move. It's going to put that edge loop. It always puts it like at the dead center of whatever the two vertices are that are nearby. So I'm going to switch to transparent mode now that we've got two sides to this thing. We got to make sure we select all the vertices. If we just left it like this and did a box selection like that, it's only going to select one side, the visible side. So if you switch on transparent mode and box select, you'll see we get all of it, which is just what we want. And I'm using my number keypad on my keyboard to move around in the isometric view. So that's really helpful. All right, let's see. I actually didn't want those. I wanted these, and I wanted these. And we can delete those vertices. That's good. And I'm going to keep the edges open because I'm going to actually join these all up. In fact, we can do that all the way around. Let me grab these faces and delete those. All right. Also, it looks like we've got some interfaces, and I don't want to have those because I don't have any unnecessary geometry. Delete those faces. Great. And just make sure merge is turned on for my mirror modifier, and I'll just hit apply. And we can go ahead and add in our array and just crank that up. Geez, that moves fast. And we're going to add another one to go the other way. So this other one, what we could do is hit 0, and this stands for X, Y, and Z, by the way. So we can move it along the Y. So now we've got this, really great array of grids. So if I turn our room back on, I can position this. Oh, hey, way too big. So just tab, select all, and scale it down, and it affects the whole thing. Grab it on the X, grab it on the Y. Just line that thing up, and then we're going to increase the count a few more times just to make sure we're fully covering our floor. All right. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I'm going to drag the floor down. So I already got that selected. So I'm going to hit E and grab it on the Z and just drag it down just to create this cavity below our floor. And then I'm going to hit Shift A, mesh, plane, and scale that up. And grab it down. There we go. Yeah, that should be good. I'm going to tab in, hit E to extrude, and grab that as well just to thicken it up. And I'm going to tab into it and select all and go normals, recalculate outside. We should probably do that for this as well. So make sure everything's selected. We go mesh, normals, recalculate. Just to make sure, double check things are staying clean. Awesome. Now we can move this floor object up so that it's, oh, look at that, it lines up perfectly. That's cool. And then what we can do is, let's just create a little bit more detail for our doors. So we're going to select on the room again. Oh, let's rename this, rename that great floor. Why not? It's a great floor. Base floor for the bottom. And we can tab into our room. There we go. Tab into our room. And I'm going to alt click that inner edge loop right there. I'm going to hit Shift D, P to separate by selection, get out of edit mode. And then this guy, I'm going to tab into, hit A to select all. I'm going to scale him up just a little bit. I'm going to hit E to extrude, and then grab that in just like that. All right. Now, what I want to do is alt click on that ring there, and I'm going to grab it on the X and just drag it into the room a little bit, just to kind of give our door some depth. And I'll do this out here as well. And then to kind of firm up these edges, I'm going to hit Control R, or even better, actually, if you hit Alt and select one of these edge loops and hit I to inset, that's going to automatically help you by creating that sharp edge. That's how you get sharp edges when you're using smoothing or the subdivision surface. You want to make sure you've got two edges really close together. Do the same out here. I just drag it in just a little bit, and you can see it looks much sharper now. We could do the same on the inside as well, I guess. The other thing we can do is actually it's just Alt-click these groups. We can change the mean crease. And if I just turn on these buttons here will show us what the subdivision surface is doing when we're in edit mode. If I turn up the mean crease, you'll see what it does is it actually tells the subdivision surface to make these guys basically hard-edged. So we can just do it a little bit like that, and you're still going to get a bit of a curve there. You could go all the way to 1, and that's going to make it a really sharp edge, but you might get some weird artifacts as things come into this zone, because you can see they're kind of doing it a bit harsh. But overall, it works really well, especially on a small object like this. If it was a big object with a lot of space and a lot of geometry, it might not work as well. All right, it's really coming together. I mean, this feels like Star Wars, doesn't it? Definitely. I mean, I'm there. All right, cool. So next step, what we're going to do is start adding some detail objects around the room, and maybe also a bit of like an inner area on the floor here. I might go ahead and do that now. I'll use this ring, which works really well. I'm going to hit Shift D to duplicate, P to separate by selection, get out of tab, edit mode, and I'm going to grab this guy, bring him up on the Z axis, just so he's up here. I'm going to jump in to edit mode, switch to transparent so I can see, hit E to extrude, and scale it in. And then I'm going to grab these top faces and hit scale Z0 just to flatten it out. And then I'm going to inset these edges here, just to give us that hard edge. And then for the bit where we intersect with the door, just grab those edges and scale them on the Z and bring them down. So it's like that. And might even do an edge loop here, like that, just to tighten up that point and that point. Okay, the last thing we're going to do for this episode is quickly build out our blade door. So, in Star Wars, we've got this really cool blade kind of door, circular iris things that, open and close and cut people in half and all that fun stuff. So we're going to make one of those. We're not going to worry about animating it just yet, but we're just going to get the basic shape in, and then we can worry about animating it later. So we'll start off by selecting this door object and just hit into tab mode and hit A to select all the faces. And then what we're going to do is hit F3 and type in cursor to snap cursor to selected. And that'll put the cursor, the 3D cursor, right in the center of all the vertices that we have selected. Okay. Now, get out of edit mode. We're going to hit Shift A, mesh, and plane. We're going to add a plane. Now we need to rotate that plane on the Y so we can actually see it. Make it face us. Then what we're going to do is we're going to go to edit mode for this guy, and we're just going to select one of these vertices right here, and same thing, cursor to selected. There it is. Boom. All right, now we can get out of edit mode, and with the squares selected, what we're going to do is put our origin right here. Go up here to Object, Set Origin, and Origin to 3D Cursor. So now the origin of our cube is right there. This is a little convoluted. I apologize. I'm sure there's an easier way to do this. Snap cursor to selected again, and then now we can select this guy and snap selected to cursor. Boom! Hey, we got there. That was probably 10 steps more than you had to do. I'm sure someone will enlighten me in the comments, and please do, and then we can update everyone next video on how to actually do that 10-step process much quicker. Okay, cool. So now we've got this thing where we want it. Now we're just going to select these two vertices, double tap G to grab. We're going to move them on. They'll move along the edges there. And we're just going to create kind of a blade shape, roughly about like that. Hit the whole thing, and we're just we'll scale the whole thing down out of edit modes until these points. I want to hide these points kind of within that circle. Go back into tab, and then I want to actually move this point, but I don't want to slide it along these. I actually just want to move it right here, but I don't want to move it, forward and back. So if I just hit grab, and kind of line this thing up, if you look around, it's actually off a little bit. It's kind of poking out. That's not what we want. So I want to lock it, but I want to lock it to 2 planes of motion, not just 1. So instead of just hitting X or Y or Z, what you can actually do is hit G for grab, and then shift, and then hit the cardinal direction you don't want. So X. So now you get this cool thing set up now where basically wherever you move it, you're never moving it on the X value. You're only moving it on the Y and the Z. So now we can get it, perfectly lined up. So I'll look back on it straight on, and I'll grab Shift X and just pop that there. So now we've got my vertices kind of hiding in that. Okay, now what we're going to do, we just select the object, and then we go up to Object, Duplicate Linked, which is Alt-D is the key, is the hotkey for that. So you select Alt-D, and I'll show you what that does in a second. So I'm going to rotate this about 30 degrees. There we go. So now what happens if I select the original one, go into edit mode, and grab any of these vertices, you can see they're both affected. So the data of these two are linked together, so the geometry data. So what I can do with that now is I can hit Alt-D again, and then we can rotate 30 degrees. And now again, if you pop into edit mode, now we're affecting all 3 of them. There we go. Alt-D, and then we want to rotate, let's see, 30, 60, 90, 9, 10, 11, 120, 1, 2, 0. There it is. Okay, cool. So 120. All right, now that I've got duplicates of all these, I want to find my first one. So I'm actually going to rename, I should have renamed all these earlier. I'm just going to call this blade, or door blade. And then I'm going to take that name and just copy it into all these. All right, now Blender automatically, adds the numbers because it can't have 2 objects with the same name, so it's very convenient. You just paste them all in. Okay, so I'm gonna grab my original one, and you can see now we can affect all the vertices. And what I want to do is just kind of get on the side view a little bit. I'm going to jump out of orthographic mode. Look at this. Make sure I've got the right one. I'm going to grab one of these top vertices, and I'm just going to move it. Yeah. Okay, cool. So I want to move it on the X just back a little bit. Also grab the front vertice and grab that on the X and bring that out. And just until it's clear to the renderer that they're separated. Perfect. Okay, and just for temporarily for right now, what we might do as well is just add in a solidify. And what we can do with this is we can expand the thickness of all these guys just by having it on the 1. And that way there's just a little bit of depth to them, and we can apply this later. Now I'll show you kind of how it works. So we can take these objects and just switch to transparent so we can see, and vertices. And I'll just grab the center vertice. And you can see if we offset that center vertice a little bit and we move it, we're getting this really nice kind of blade look. Okay, I'm going to create a new collection to hold all these guys just so we don't have a ton of stuff in our scene, just dirtying everything up. Dirty objects. All right, we're going to call this the door blades, and I'm going to just shift select all of them and drop them in. Right click on the collection and click on select objects, and we're going to grab them on the X and just move them back, probably right about to there. Okay, and now we just need to expand our entryway. So I'm going to go into edit mode, switch to faces and loop select, and I'm going to grab this on the X and bring it forward so that it completely overlaps. Oops, I accidentally grabbed one of these guys. So I'm just going to hit B to box select and shift select. Now we can just grab it on the X and drag it out so that it's fully covering over our door. Might even give it a little bit further. Okay, the last thing here, we're just going to grab our object here, this thing, the door, and I'm just going to create just a little bit of interest. I'm going to slide this thing forward just so it's like right about there. I'm going to create another edge loop, just like that, and then I'm going to select these faces, and I'm going to hit E to extrude, and I'm going to just scale them down like that, just so we get this little like inner bit. Looks pretty cool. And then I can hit I to inset that, and I'm just going to inset it. I know we're getting some very strange things down here, but that's because of the creases. So what we can do to fix that is just shift select these guys, turn all this on so we can actually see what we're looking at. Go to our main crease and just lock it off. Okay, last but not least, I'm just going to add one more edge loop into this. And because this is at an angle, this edge loop's at an angle, I want to line it up perfectly with the doors. So we're going to hit S to scale on the X, and we're going to hit 0, and then I'm going to grab it on the X and just drag it right out. So it's just in line with the door. So R, I could just drag that one straight into this one, and then grab this one on the X and just take it to the other side of the door. We can alt-click those faces and hit E to extrude, and then we can scale them in. Just create some edge loops just to firm up the shape, and then we can also inset this one here. All right, cool. So there we are. We've got our cool iris door, we've got the frame, and we've got our floor as well as the dome object that we are building out for our room. So this little Star Wars space is really coming together. I hope you're really happy with where we made it to. I hope you learned some cool things about modeling and got a better sense of kind of how to put a scene together. I hope that my little mistakes and stuff were helpful just to see, how do I solve these problems when I run into them. So what we're going to be doing next is the detail of this this space that we've created. So we're going to create little switch boxes and lots of wires next time, and pipes and stuff. We're just going to really fill this space with some really interesting things. I've got some cool ideas and cool plans for that. Again, we're going to be in Blender now for the next few episodes. So as we build out this scene, build out this model, and then build out the hollow table, and then we're going to do textures and stuff in Eevee, we're going to get it all fleshed out. And then once it's fully fleshed out and we've got it all working well here in Blender, we're then going to be doing another part where we're going to take it all over into Unreal to set things up and finish out our scene in VR. So again, if you're just interested in the Blender part, hey, just keep watching, keep staying tuned, because we're going to just be really Blender focused for this tutorial series. It's only that first video that we really talk about Unreal, and then the last video when we bring everything over, maybe one or two more, just kind of flesh out some details. But if you really enjoyed this video, please hit the like button so that more people can find out about it. Really appreciate it. And if you want to stay tuned for other episodes, hit the subscribe button and make sure to ring the bell for notifications so that you can get notifications when they come out. I try and do a premiere for every episode that launches each week so that I'm there ready to go and chat with everybody when we land it. So keep an eye out for those as they come up. And it's great to see everybody there, and just nice to interact with you a little bit in more of a live way. So anyways, thanks again for staying tuned, and I hope you have a fantastic week. I will see you in the next tutorial.